Pretty cool, huh? Life gets hard sometimes, doesn't it? We have a lot of questions when there's a lot of things pushing back up against us, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? And life is a battle, life is a struggle, and sometimes spiritually, sometimes physically, sometimes metaphorically, but life is hard. And let's face the reality: you do have an adversary, and he doesn't want to see you succeed. But Yahweh draws you to him. See, what we submit ourselves to is where our focus is going to be. And so where do we keep our focus constantly? Do we keep our focus at Yahweh, His life, at His example, at the book that He gave us to use in our lives, the words that are written on our heart? Are we doing this as our example and how we're supposed to keep our focus? Or are we looking at the world for our focus? If we're looking at the world for our focus, you're not going to have much hope, guys. And you're going to see a lot of dread. You're going to see a lot of sorrow. You're going to see a lot of pain. And it doesn't mean that life as a child of Yahweh is easier. People back many years ago used to hear a lot, give your life to the Lord and everything will be fine. What a lie. It's like, your life will be so much easier if you just, no, it won't. Your life will be a struggle, but that doesn't mean that you don't do it. It means it will turn out. Yahweh gives you hope. He brings you in the midst of the fighting. He says He'll go in the battle before you. So we can trust Him in all of that. And again, where are we going to put our heart? Where are we going to put our focus? And we see a lot of that in some of the examples that we're going to get at today. We're going to talk a little bit about Purim and the history of that, and even the present and future of that too. And Purim is this Monday night, Tuesday. And whether you celebrate or not, I'm not even getting into that today, okay? Not even whether you celebrate or how or anything like that. I'm just saying, if we are people of Yahweh, we should know the story, shouldn't we? We should know what was said, right? We should know what was experienced. We should know what was done and what we need to learn in the midst of that. It is, the story of Esther is a book in the Scripture. And so we need to see what the Father is trying to tell us in the midst of that. He's trying to show us His heart in all of this. Okay. Well, like many things, before we go in over here, we kind of need to back up a little bit and kind of put a little bit of context into this, okay? So for the purpose of what we're going to do today, we're going to go all the way back to when Yahweh brought Israel out of Mitzrayim. When He brought them out, remember, He said that was an act of redemption. Exodus chapter 6, He says, I will bring you out, I will redeem you, I will bring you to me. He said, I am redeeming you when I bring you out. And when He brought them out, the first thing He did after He brought them out was bring them through the water, a mikveh, a baptism, right? And then after He brought them there, He brought them to the mountain to reveal Himself and His word, to equip them for the life and the journey that was ahead of them, for the life and the journey where they were to go and how they were to live their point from this right now forward. And guys, that's what He does with us. When He redeems you, right? He redeems you, you're born again, okay, then baptism, mikveh. Right? Mikveh. And then we have His word to learn how to walk with Him, to walk in His promises and to walk in the directions and the paths that He's given us for life and many other things. Israel was no different. Okay? It's always been that way, though. This has always been how the Father has brought us to Him. So in order to see what we have forward when we go to the story of Esther, we need to go back for a minute and look at when He brought them out. We're going to start at Exodus 15, verses 22 to 24. It says, Moshe brought Israel from the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days into the wilderness, and they found what? No water. In other words, they found nothing, right? They went three. Now, here's a question. How long would it take you to be dissatisfied with Yahweh after He has given you the biggest thing you've ever seen in your life? Passover. He brought them out with His mighty hand outstretched. He smashed the Egyptians at the river. Those who had oppressed them, those that held them back, the water engulfed them. Never have to worry about going back ever again. And they shouted and they rejoiced and praised the name of Yahweh. And they're singing songs to Him on the other side of the sea. And this is awesome. 3 days later, all right, God. How quickly we forget. So they go 3 days and they have no water. So they came to Marah, and there they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moshe, saying, What shall we drink? So, recap of the current situation and what's going on here, okay? There were 3 days in the wilderness. Guess what? It's a desert. How long can you go in the desert without drinking water? Were they wrong for wanting water? No, not at all. But it was their attitude behind that was the problem, right? They grew bitter because they weren't getting what they needed in the time they felt they needed it. And I believe if they would have just said, hey, Moses, we making a water stop anytime? Do we have some water? I believe they would have got it, okay? But no, they started murmuring, complaining, and see this Moses, he can't even bring us any water. I thought didn't he check this out, playing this out? We're following this guy. Who does he think he is? We need water, right? So anyway, here they are, the 3 days, no water. And then it says they came to the place of Marah, and there was water there, but they could not drink the water because they were bitter. Interesting phrasing in there, not getting deep into that, but it doesn't say they could not drink the waters because the waters were bitter. It says they could not drink the waters because they were bitter. The water was a reflection of what was happening in them. The water was supposed to give life. The water was life and sustenance. But they could not drink the water, that which was supposed to give life, because they were bitter within themselves. Okay, so they were bitter. And the people murmured against Moshe, saying, what are we going to drink, right? So again, what was bitter? The water or the people? It was the people that were bitter. But yet Yahweh made a way that the water would become sweet, that the water would become restored and be sweet. It was when a piece of wood was thrown into the water. There's nothing magical or mystical about the piece of wood, guys. Just representations of things. The word etz is also a wood, a tree, a gallows, right? Symbolizing something. I believe it's representative of the stake or the cross that Yeshua was there on. And he took the water that the people received as bitter, and he made it sweet. He took our bitterness upon him. Think Isaiah 53, guys. He took our bitterness upon him, our disease, our sickness, all of these things from us, he took on him and made sweet with our life. Now we can live with him, okay? Amen. So it's a restoration thing, and I believe Yahweh was teaching them something. Even supernaturally, Yahweh was teaching them something. No matter what it looks like, I can make a way. No matter what it looks like. Yeah, there's the water there, but you can't drink it because there's bitterness here. But yet, I can make it work. I can bring restoration. I can bring healing, and I can give you life. Like he said in Deuteronomy 8. He caused them to go without food so that he could give them manna. And so that they would know where their hearts were. Right? So all of that, I believe Yahweh is bringing us into himself. Then we go to Exodus 17. It says, and all the congregation of the people of Israel moved from the wilderness of Sin by stages according to the commandment of Yahweh, and they camped at Rephidim. There was no water for the people to drink. Again, what do we have a picture here? No water. Again, right? So therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test Yahweh? But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and the livestock with thirst? They said, I thought you said we were going to bring us to a land flowing with milk and honey. Instead, we're out here in the wilderness and we don't even have water. What are you doing to us, right? Verse 4. So Moses cried to Yahweh. He said, what shall I do with this people? They're ready to stone me. They were. All right, they were. They're like, if we're going to die out here and you're the one that gave us hope and they're not delivering on it, if we're going to die, so are you. Okay? And Moses is crying out. And Yahweh said to Moshe, pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel. How many of you ever saw that before, by the way? It wasn't just Moses standing there at the rock. It said the elders of Israel standing there with him. And take there the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile, and go. And behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moshe did so in the sight of all the elders of Israel. Verse 7, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested Yahweh by saying, is the Lord among us or not? And then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Wait a minute. That seemed kind of a sudden, didn't it? I mean, the way that reads, so they got water, and they named the place Meribah and Marah, and and by the way, Amalek attacked them. I mean, that seems kind of like, well, that just happened sudden. What just happened here, right? The way I see this is this, guys. What happened here preceding Amalek attacking opened the door for Amalek to attack. Was Yahweh with them? Absolutely. Did Yahweh go before them? Absolutely. Then why was Amalek allowed room to attack? Because the people fought against God. They didn't receive the word that was given to them with faith. Well, in fact, we read that in the book of Hebrews, doesn't it? It says that the word that was declared to us is the same word that was declared to them, but they didn't receive it in faith. Can we be in a place where Yahweh tells us His word, but it doesn't do us any good because we're like, yeah, I've heard it before? That's not the way we're supposed to live. We're supposed to have the word written on our hearts. That means it gives us hope. It gives us life. It gives us something to look forward to. And it shows us a good perspective to follow, how we are to see the world and how we're to see the things around us. And the more time we spend in the book, the more it's going to change how we view everything. Right? And so the people said, is God with us or not? And then Amalek came. So Yahweh told Moses about the rock and how He would give the water, but the grumbling and the quarreling, all these things opened up the way for Amalek to attack. And we'll get to that and what happens here in a minute. A couple scriptures. First, verses chapter 17, 14 to 16. Adonai said to Moshe, write this for a memorial in the book and rehearse it in the hearing of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the memory of the Amalekites from under heaven. And Moshe built an altar and he called the name of it Adonai Nisi. Nisi, Nes is a miracle or a banner. Okay, so Adonai Nisi, he is my banner, he is my miracle. And then he said, by the hand upon the throne of Adonai, Adonai will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So there was war, there was battle, and Joshua went out to fight, right? And Israel prevailed because Yahweh was with them, right? But there's more to the story. What's another take? We see another scripture in Deuteronomy of the same kind of event, all right? Deuteronomy 25, verses 17 and 19. It says, remember what Amalek did to you along the way as you came out of Egypt. How he happened upon you. Notice how he happened upon you? We'll get to that. How he happened upon you from along the way and attacked those among you in the rear, all the stragglers behind you when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God. Now when Adonai your God grants you rest from all the enemies surrounding you in the land Adonai your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, you are to blot out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Do not forget. You're to blot out the memory. Don't forget. So are we supposed to blot out the memory, or it says that Yahweh is going to fight with Amalek from generation to generation, so we remember it or we don't, or what are we supposed to do here? I believe there's a few things we can see here. First off, what does Amalek desire to do? He didn't just desire to come against the people of Israel. There were certain ones that he attacked in the midst of them. Notice he didn't attack the ones by the tabernacle, which granted it hadn't been built yet, meaning the center of the camp where the fire and the cloud was. He didn't attack them. Who did he attack? So it says, how he happened upon you along the way and attacked those among you in the rear, all the stragglers. The word straggler is hashal, which means those who are unsteady. Now, Scripture says when they came out of Mitzrayim, there was none weak or feeble among them. They were physically fit. No matter what age they were completely physically capable of walking on this journey. Even their sandals didn't wear out, right? So it says, that's not what we're talking about here, then, are we? We're not talking about those who were physically just couldn't keep up. We're talking about those who were unsteady. Faith. Those who okay, I'm following, but I don't really know what's happening here, but I'm going along with you guys. I don't know what's happening. Where's the faith? In or out, right? So those who were just kind of unsteady, double-minded, unstable, back and forth, vacillating between, you might think about the story of Eliyahu, right? How long are you going to serve? Choose, right? And it says those who were straggling behind you, or behind you is Achar. This is when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God. We'll get back to Achar in a minute. James 1, 5-8 says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that gives to all men liberally, that upbraids not, and it shall be given to him. But let him ask how? Let him ask in faith, not wavering. For he that wavers is like the wave of the sea, or is like the wave of the sea driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think he shall receive what? Anything from the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. there are times in life when we do have questions. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having questions. It's good to ask questions. That's how you build your faith, by asking questions and letting God answer them, right? That's how we build our faith and how we live our life. But yet when we stay in the question and never look for the answer, all we're doing is just asking the questions, not seeking Him. What are we doing? That doesn't produce a firm foundation for us. That means we are going to be unstable in all the things that we're doing. So the attacks came when the people were weary and tired. Again, what does this mean? Because it said there was none feeble among them when they came out. So what does this mean? When does the adversary bring attacks in our life? When you're strong? When you're feeling strong, or when you're feeling weak? When you had a really bad day and a long day, you just didn't sleep good, and you're just ready to just, right? Consider that. Further, how can the strong become weak? Doubt. Double-mindedness. What causes doubt and double-mindedness? A lot of things. Everybody's different. But one of the things that can happen here is when life doesn't go the way that we think it should, we often look to the heavens and go, God, why? Nothing wrong with asking God about what's happening in our life, what's going on. But again, do we hang out at the question, or are we resolving within ourselves? It doesn't matter why. We just follow. We just do. We trust Him. We continue in our life. Not to make light of the things we go through, guys, because life is hard, it's difficult, it's painful at times. But God is always good. He is always faithful. So we go on. We continue. We walk. Okay? Let's not be double-minded or unstable in what the Father has called us to do. Sometimes we might move a little faster. Sometimes we might move a little slower. But the point is that we keep moving. We keep going on with what the Father has called us to do. And that's to be a light to the world. Be a light to those out there. Because the world is hurting too. And they're looking for the answers. There's only one who has the answer. So, what happens? Deuteronomy 25:18 says He killed those who were straggling behind. The word achar is the word straggling behind. It means to procrastinate, to delay, to be slack. Consider this. A lack of faith will delay you walking forward. And that's when doubt attacks. If Yahweh says, this is the way that I want you to walk in, these are the paths that I have laid out for you, the longer we sit back and go, I don't know, the more we reason ourselves out of obedience. Whereas Yahweh's just called us to follow. When Yeshua came and he talked to His disciples and He called His Talmidim out, did He say, I'm going to sit down here and reason with you until you fully understand why I'm asking you to follow me? Or did He just say these two words? Follow me. What's He asking us to do today? Follow Him. Follow Him. Pursue Him. He will teach us His way. Right? Okay. Final thought is that there's a connection between the word Amalek and Safech, which means doubt. Okay, given this way. Amalek, if you break down the Hebrew letters and equate to their numbers, they equal the same. I'm not really big on this, guys. My point of this being that in traditional thought, the word Amalek is synonymous with doubt. Because what happened in the wilderness? They came 3 days in the wilderness. They got there, couldn't drink the water. So what was the response? They doubted. Is God with us or not? See, that's not speculation. That's what happened. And so doubt can lead us to a way of opening ourselves up for other things, where it's like, what's the best way to avoid the battle? Don't be where the battle is. But if you must go through the battle, make sure Yahweh's going before you. And that we're following Him. Like, He's in this battle over here, and I'm like, I don't know, I like that fight over there better. I'm going to go to this fight. I don't think so. Let's follow Him, okay? Because if He says He's going to lead us in the battle and go before us, that's where we need to go. Okay, let's not go try running off under our own things. Further, what we have here is doubt opened the way for Amalek, and it says, and he encountered you. Remember, it said, oh, he happened upon you. It says he encountered you. In the Hebrew, the word is karcha, which literally means, it's from the word kar, which means to cool, cold. Literally, he cooled you off. Consider this. People came out of Mitzrayim, they went through the sea, they saw everyone that oppressed them, everyone that held them back, that was gone. Yahweh caused the waters to come back over. They were excited. They were on fire for Yahweh. There's nothing you could tell them at that point that would cause them to doubt Yahweh. But by the time Amalek came along, they had cooled off. Their fire had dwindled because was God with us or not? So he cooled them off. And so that opened the way for that. So what was the answer? Look up. Have faith. What did Yahweh tell Moshe? I'll give you water, but you got to look to me for the way. You got to look to me for the answers. I'll make sure you have what you need in this wilderness. I'll make sure you have what you need in the midst of all of this, okay? So if we're going to talk about Amalek and Purim, how does Amalek have anything to do with Purim? Like, okay, you said we were going to talk about Purim. How are you going to set this up? Right? Okay, well, to get there, we're going to talk about Agag the Amalekite. Who's Agag the Amalekite? 1 Samuel 15, 18 to 21. Says, Adonai sent you on a mission, and he said, go and utterly destroy the Amalekites, the sinners, and wage war against them until you annihilate them. So why then did you not obey the voice of Adonai, but rush greedily onto the spoil, doing what was evil in Adonai's eyes? But I did obey the voice of Adonai, Saul said to Samuel, and I went on to the mission to which Adonai sent me, and I brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and utterly destroyed the Amalekites. I destroyed the Amalekites, but I brought the king back. Is that what he said to do? But the people took some of the spoil. Is that what he said to do? No. They're like, so that's cattle. This is some good-looking cattle, and the people needed the cattle, so they took the cattle. It sounds a lot like, I threw the gold in the fire. Out came this calf. I mean, there he is, the king. He's making excuses. He's doing things, right? He's excusing his way out of obedience to what he was told to do. It says, but the people took some of the spoil, the sheep and the oxen, the best of what was there, but they were going to do it because they were going to make offerings to Yahweh. It's like, is that what God said to do with it? No, it's not what he said to do with it. So then Samuel said, bring me Agag, the king of Amalek. And Agag approached him in the chains, thinking, surely bitter death has turned back. And then Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women. And then Samuel cut Agag into pieces before Adonai and Gilgal. That is a prophet. Okay, but then we get further down into Esther 3. It says sometime later, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. So there's a lot of speculation here. Is this Agag and Haman, is Haman a descendant of this king Agag? Maybe, maybe not. There is definite room you can see on both sides of that. But for the point of this, it says he was the Agagite, and he's working in the same mentality that Amalek did. So is that a coincidence? So they brought him in here, and it says he brought Haman, the Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and setting him in the chair above all the officials who were with him, and all the king's servants and all the king's men who were with the king's gate bowed down and gave honor to Haman because the king had commanded it, but Mordecai would not bow down. And we know what that did to Haman. What can I say? What can I say? What can I say? Yeah. So this is the thing. I mean, it was like this man better bow down to me. Why isn't he bowing down to me? And Mordecai's like, I'm a Jew. I bow to no one but God. Well, Haman didn't care about Yahweh. He didn't care. He just wanted what he wanted here in this world. He wanted the power and the money and everything else. And he's like, I'm going to get this guy. So there it commences. The Purim plot. Haman wanted to kill Mordecai, but it wasn't just good enough to kill Mordecai. I'm going to kill Mordecai, and I'm going to kill everyone he is related to. I'm going to kill his bloodline, his heritage, everything. I'm going to wipe him out completely. I mean, Haman thought he was Scarface or something. Like, I'm going to kill you and your family and your cousin and your brother and your. So how did Haman determine when he was going to do this? He had this in plan for a long time. And how are we going to do this? And when are we going to determine these? He cast lots, called Pur. So what is it called Purim? Because he cast lots to determine when would be the perfect time to put into motion my plan to kill the Jewish people, to destroy them. When are these going to be done? And the story behind the book of Esther, because you guys know Esther wasn't her name, right? Hadassah. So why was she called Esther? It's kind of funny because what she was called is what she was. Esther means hidden, concealed. And that's what she was. She was hidden. She was concealed. Her identity was covered. I mean, the king, did he know she was a Jew? No. Her identity was concealed until the right time for it to be revealed. And you know, if you go through Scripture, you find so many places where this same thing, something is concealed for the right time for it to be revealed over and over and over again. I mean, Jacob and Esau. Identity concealed to be revealed. Right? What about Yehuda and Tamar? Identity concealed, waiting for the right time to be revealed. What about Yosef? Identity concealed for the right time. It's throughout the Scriptures. And Purim was no exception. The identity was concealed, waiting for the right time for it to be revealed. The interesting thing is, nowhere in the book do you find the name of Yahweh. Does it mean he's not there? Doesn't mean he's not there. It means he's using his people to align how he is orchestrating things, working behind the scenes, right? What's going on? The story of Esther continues with the idea that Yahweh conceals things for the time and the people to search out that thing. Proverbs 25:2 said, "It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search it out." Yahweh is covering things up, and it's not like, oh, he's hiding that he just can't be revealed. No, there are things in the Scripture that are only going to be there as a reward for those who diligently seek him. It's not that no one can't find it, and you have to have this secret knowledge. Not at all. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is there are things that you may not know or understand until you actually search for it. Until your heart is really there and set to it. Yeah? In other words, you get out of it what you put into it. Right? Deuteronomy 29:28 says, "The secret things belong to Adonai our God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children forever in order to do all the words of this Torah." The things that Yahweh has revealed to us, do it. It's like James says, "To him who knows to do good and doesn't do it, to him it is sin." Right? So, again, if you know what the Father has revealed to you, then do it. You don't know it, well, if you don't know it, you don't know it. But yet, the more we live, the more we search, the more we do, the more we're going to find out. So we walk with him along the way, and he continually reveals himself to us. Okay? Step by step. How are we supposed to walk with Yahweh? How are we supposed to do all these things? Very simple, step by step and one at a time. Just walk. Just take his hand and walk. We're all walking with him. We may not be in the same place, but as long as we're heading this direction, we can work it out. You know? So, the story of Esther. Really quick, we're going to go through these. Esther 6:1-10. So that night, one night, go back and read the story. Sometime between now and Tuesday, go back and read the book. Okay? So that night, the king couldn't sleep, so he ordered the records of the daily journal brought, and they were brought to read to the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told about an assassination plot. And the king asked how he was thanked, and he was told nothing was done for him. Wait a minute, this guy saved my life, and I didn't even say thank you? Essentially is what's going on here, right? So at this time when this is happening, Haman had come to the outer courtyard to the king's palace to speak to the king about hanging Mordecai. Talk about timing, right? I don't care what you say, Hollywood can't write nothing as good as this. About hanging Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. Talk about confidence. He had already prepared a gallows for him and went to the king to say, give me Mordecai. Right? And so the king said, oh, Haman's here? Have him come in. And so he comes in, he goes, Haman, before you say anything, what should be done for a man that the king wants to honor? And of course, why is the king asking me this? He must mean, yeah, me, right? Talk about pride, right? So Haman answered the king, oh, well, let me think here, king. I don't want to misspeak here. So this is what you do. For a man the king wants to honor, you should have royal robes brought, which the king himself wears, and other people have seen the king wear. So the people know that it's the king's robes, right? And then, get a horse that the king rides, and then have a crown put on his head. And the robes and the horse should be handed over to one of the king's most respected officials. And they should put the robes on the man the king wants to honor, and they lead him on horseback through the streets of the city, proclaiming ahead of him, this is what is done for the man for whom the king wants to honor. And the king says to Haman, you know what, Haman, that is a great idea. Here's what I want you to do. And you could see Haman. Can't you? Can't you just kind of picture him? He's like, here it comes. This is what I want you to do, Haman. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah. So go, hurry, go get the robes. Yeah. Go get the horse. And go do this for Mordecai. What? And he can't say, oh, king, you can't be serious, right? He's like, so all these things that you told me, go get this, yeah? And go get this, yeah. And then go do it for Mordecai, who sits at the king's gate, and don't leave anything out you mentioned. Which means he's the one who had to make the proclamation for Mordecai. This is the what the king wants to honor. And buddy, he had to do it enthusiastically too. He couldn't just say, yeah, the king honors this guy. He couldn't do it. He's like, this is what is done for the man who oh man. And you can just see that hatred building in him, right? Go forward, chapter 7. Haman's plot is that he wants to kill the Jewish people. Esther makes a banquet. You go present to the king. Esther had 2 banquets for the king and for Haman. And the king asked for her petition. The king says, you've gone out of your trouble. You've done all these things. I'm blessed by what can I do for you? She didn't ask him for anything at this point, right? The king is just like, I want to show my gratitude for what you've done for me. What can I do for you? And Esther says, if I have won your favor, king, and if it pleases the king, then what I ask be given me is save my life and the life of my people. They have been given over to die. They've been sold to die. And you can picture the king's confusion, right? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? What's happened here? Who wants to kill you? Right? So King Ahasuerus asked Esther, so who is he? Where is the man who wants to kill my wife? And she goes, oh, this guy. You can picture it, can't you? Esther says, oh, a ruthless enemy. It's this wicked Haman. And then Haman stood terrified because Haman didn't know. He didn't know. And you could see the look on his face. Now he's terrified because now, boy, he's really made the king mad now. Right? Wait a minute, you want to kill my wife? What's going to happen now? So, in a rage, the king got up from the wine banquet and he went out to the palace garden, but Haman remained, pleading with Esther. Well, I'd love to see that. I would love to see that. Pleading with Esther, the queen, to spare his life, for he could see that the king had decided to do him in. It's a nice political way of putting it. And Haman had just fallen on the couch where Esther was when the king returned from the palace garden to the wine banquet, and he shouted, is he even going to rape the queen here in the palace before my very eyes? Talk about walking in at a wrong moment, right? So the moment these words left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. The guards came in, and that's it. They CIA'd him right there. And Harbanah, one of the king's attendants, said, look, hey, king, look, there's this gallows over here that's 75 feet high that Haman made for Mordecai. What should we do about this? And the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided. So, chapter 8, verses 7. So King Ahasuerus said to Esther, the queen, and Mordecai the Jew, listen, I gave Esther the house of Haman. Everything that Haman had, he gave to her. And they hanged him on the gallows because he threatened the lives of the Jews. So you should issue a decree in the king's name for whatever you want concerning the Jews and seal it with the king's signet ring, because a decree written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring cannot be rescinded by anyone. Remember, the thing is, because of Haman, the king issued that go out and kill all the Jews. So what happens is Mordecai now puts it out there, anyone dare try, we will defend ourselves. You know, we're not going to submit to an order to just lay down and die. Verse 11. So the letters that said the king had granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and defend their lives by destroying, killing, and exterminating any forces of any people or province that would attack them. Their little ones or their women, they would try to seize their goods as plunder. Verse 15. Meanwhile, Mordecai left the king's presence arrayed in royal blue and white, wearing a large gold crown and a robe of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan shouted for joy. For the Jews, all was light and gladness and joy and honor. Consider the next verse for a second. Verse 17. This is a decree, has messianic tones to it. Okay? In every province and every city where the king's order and decree arrived, the Jews had gladness and joy, a feast and a holiday. There's a day coming when everything that has come against you will be vanquished. And there will be no more war. There will be no more fighting. There will be no more sadness, sorrow, no tears, no pain. And Yahweh will be great. There will be dancing in this. We'll have a holiday. You know, this the end of everything is a picture of Sukkot, guys. And the eighth day, the last great day, is a time of symbolizing eternity and entering into that great wedding feast that the Father has for us. So, when the Messiah returns, Esther 8:17 will be fulfilled on a greater scale. The people of Yahweh were attacked and they were to be annihilated, but the events turned and the people were delivered. We see in Revelation 12:17 where it says, the dragon was infuriated over the woman and went off to fight the rest of her children, those who obey God's commands and bear witness to Yeshua. But yet, the Lamb is overcome. The decree of the king goes forth that it will bring gladness and it will bring great joy. Isaiah 2:3 says, many people will go and say, come, let's go up to the mountain of Adonai, to the house of the God of Yaakov, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in the paths. For out of Zion will go forth the Torah and the word of Adonai from Yerushalayim. Micah 4:2 says, many Gentiles will go and say, come, let's go up to the mountain of Adonai, to the house of the God of Yaakov, and he will teach us his ways. We will walk in his paths. For out of Zion will go forth the Torah and the word of Adonai from Yerushalayim. Amen? So what happens next that we see here? So every province, every city, the king's order, they celebrate, and great gladness, great joy. They have a feast and they have a holiday, they celebrate, and many people from the land do what? Became Jews. They joined with the Jewish people. They came to be a part of the people of Israel because of what God did for them. Much like Mitzrayim, when they came out, and they came into the wilderness, there were people from the nations who joined with them to be a part of them. Zechariah 8:23. Adonai Tzavot says, when that time comes, 10 men will take hold, speaking of all the languages of the nations, and will grab hold of the cloak of the Jew and say, we want to go with you because we've heard that God is with you. Who is this Jew that people are going to grab hold of? Yeshua. And normally when you see all the nations being given, normally it's in relationship to 70, the 70 nations of the world, right? But how can 10 men represent all nations? Where do we see that happen? It's a picture. It's a symbolism of something. Of when Israel was scattered into all the nations. In other words, all nations will come back to serve the one true God. And they do this how? By grabbing hold of that Jew, was Yeshua. No matter where we are, no matter where we're from, sent Yeshua to come gather us, come to him. Esther 9, 1 to 10. But now in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, the reverse occurred, and Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought after their harm, and no one could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all the people. And all the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors, all the royal agents who also helped the Jews, for the fear that Mordecai had fallen on them. Yeah, we went before them, truly, right? Verse 4. So for Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. And then the Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them as they did as they pleased to those who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also killed Parsadata and Dalphon and Asphata and Porata and Adalia and Aridata and Parmasata and Arisai and Aridai and Vaizata, and the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamedata, the enemy of the Jews, but they laid no hand on the plunder. So they killed them, but they didn't take anything, right? Then what happens next? Verse 12. And the king said to the queen Esther, in Susa, the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and also the 10 sons of Haman. So what then have they done to the rest of the king's provinces? So now what is your wish? It shall be granted to you, and what is further your request, and it shall be fulfilled. And Esther said, to please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded this to be done, and a decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 men of the son of Haman were hanged. So here's the thing. He said, so tomorrow, if anyone tries again tomorrow, make it known that we can still defend ourselves. It wasn't just a one-day event. Okay? But as well as, prophetically speaking in the Bible, when you see things tomorrow, it doesn't always mean like the next 24 hours. Tomorrow can mean like at some future event as well, right? There's another tomorrow that we want to cover here really quick. January 30th, 1944. Hitler said, if the Nazis are vanquished, the Jews will be able to celebrate a special Purim. Let that sink in for a minute. During World War II, the Nazis in Germany tried to wipe the Jewish race from the face of the earth. 6 million Jews were killed by the Germans. After the end of the war, the surviving Nazi leaders were tried at Nuremberg for this and other war crimes. The trials began on November 20th, 1945, for 22 German Nazi leaders. On October 1st, 1946, 12 of the German defendants were sentenced to death by hanging for their part in the atrocities committed against the Jews and others. One of those convicted was Martin Bormann, who was sentenced in absentia, and the second was Hermann Göring, who committed suicide in his cell just hours before the execution by taking cyanide poison. The remaining 10, how many? How many sons of Haman were there? The remaining 10 Germans were hanged to death on October 16, 1946. Dr. Moshe Katz reveals some incredible information about this event. Since the trial was conducted by a military tribunal, the sentence handed down should have been death by firing squad or by electric chair as practiced in the USA. However, the court specifically prescribed hanging, exactly as in Esther's original request. Let Haman's 10 sons be hanged. On October 1st, 1946, after 216 court sessions, the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg delivered the verdict sentencing the leaders of the Nazi Party to death by hanging. The author of the following account, Kingsbury Smith of the International News Service, was chosen by lot to represent the American press at the execution of those 10 leaders. So this was an article that was ran, okay? Nuremberg, Germany, 16th October 1946, by the International News Service. Julius Streicher made his melodramatic appearance at 2:12 a.m. While his monocles were being removed and his bare hands bound, this ugly, dwarfish little man, wearing a threadbare suit and a well-worn bluish shirt buttoned to the back, to the neck, but without a tie, He was notorious during his days of power for his flashy dress, glanced at the 3 wooden scaffolds rising menacingly in front of him, and he glanced around the room, and his eyes resting momentarily upon the small group of witnesses. By this time, his hands were tied securely behind his back. 2 guards, one on each arm, directed him to number 1 gallows to the left of the entrance. He walked steadily 6 feet to the first wooden step, and his face was twitching. As the guards stopped him at the bottom of the steps for identification formally, he uttered his piercing scream, Heil Hitler. The shriek sent a shiver down my back. As its echo died away, an American colonel standing by the steps said sharply, "Ask the man his name." In response to the interpreter's query, Stryker shouted, "You know my name well." The interpreter repeated his request, and the condemned man yelled, "Julius Stryker." As he reached the platform, Stryker cried out, "Now it goes to God." He was pushed the last 2 steps to the mortal spot beneath the hangman's rope. The rope was being held back against a wooden rail by the hangman. Stryker was swung suddenly to face the witnesses and glared at them, and he screamed, "Purim Fest, 1946. Purim is a Jewish holiday celebrated in the spring, commemorating the execution of Haman, the ancient persecutor of the Jews described in the Old Testament. Interesting, because this was not in the spring. This was nowhere around Purim. So why was this man making a declaration, making an association with Purim? Same thing. These 10 men were left. These 10 men who had come against the Jewish people were to be hanged, much like Haman's 10 sons. Another tomorrow? Look at this. Esther 9, 7, and 9. If you look in the scrolls, it is written this way when it goes through the names. When he lists the names, it says, and he also killed Parshandata, killed Dalphon, and killed Aspata. As you go through the names, you notice the names are written on the right. And if you go look at the left-hand side, you see the Va'et. You have that Vav going all the way down. In other words, it kind of looks like a gallows. Further, there's some other things that you see in the text here, which I'll point out in just a second. So Esther 9:13. So Esther said, if it please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow to do according to this day's edict, and the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded this to be done. The decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. Here's something interesting. If Haman's 10 sons had already been killed, why would they be hanged? Make sense? If they had already been killed, why would they be hanged? Other than so everyone could see it as a show. Sages comment on the word tomorrow in Esther's request. There's a tomorrow that is not now and a tomorrow which is later. In other words, they're saying possibly this is a prophetic event. So about the strange formatting. The names of the 10 sons of Haman were written in a perpendicular column on the right-hand side of the page with the Vav, which means and, on the left-hand side. This is probably derived from the tradition that the 10 sons of Haman were hanged on the tall gallows, one above the other. So not like 10 gallows, they were hung one above the other on this very large gallows. Now, again, I said there's something interesting. If you look in the scroll in the Megillah Esther, you're going to see something interesting. If you notice, you may have already caught it. There's some letters there that are small. Well, when you see this in a Torah scroll, what does it do? Draws your attention, doesn't it? It catches your eye. You're like, why is that like that? Whether they're small or whether they're large or whether they're upside down or whatever they are, if it's in the Torah scroll that way, it's that way from scroll to scroll to scroll to scroll to scroll. Why? So if you look, you see a connection here. These 3 letters are written smaller. A Taf, a Shin, and a Zayin. Those 3 letters together, Taf, Shin, Zayin, are the numbers for the Jewish year 5707. Which corresponds to the secular year 1946. The year the 10 men were hanged. So why do we celebrate Purim? Is this just for the Jews? Are others asked to remember to celebrate the victory of the people of Yahweh in exile? Let me ask you in this way. When the temple and the tabernacle stood, Did Yahweh prescribe exactly how every single offering was brought? Not necessarily. He said what types of offerings were brought, but he didn't say, oh, you did this, now you have to bring a peace offering. You can bring a peace offering when? Anytime you wanted. What about an oil offering? You can bring an oil offering anytime you wanted. See? So he gave the way and the how and how it was to be done, but it was up to you when you were to bring it. So if you just say at any point in time, I just want to thank God for what he's done in my life, and I want to give him an offering of thankfulness, we would bring a Shalomim offering. Anything wrong with that? Anything wrong with acknowledging if you've been through a great event and you want to thank God for it? You want to just give him thanks and honor and praise for something big and catastrophic that's happened in your life, but praise God, you're still here? Anything wrong with that? I want to give God thanks. So here we are. We give him thanks. Guess what happened in the story of Esther? That. Exactly that. God brought the entire nation through this major event. And they wanted to give thanks to God for that. Is this a moed that's commanded in the scripture? No. No, it's not. You have to celebrate it. No, you didn't. But is it good to acknowledge that God is still God? Even when it doesn't seem like there's no other way, he made a way. Even when it seemed like there's no way out, he did it. Right? Look. Back to the story. We'll be finishing up here soon. Esther 9:17. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of Adar, they rested, and they made it a holiday for celebrating and rejoicing. However, the Jews of Shushan assembled on both the 13th and the 14th days of Adar, so it was on the 15th that they rested and made it a holiday for celebrating and rejoicing. This is why the Jews of the villages, those who live in unwalled towns, make the 14th day of the month of Adar a day for celebrating and rejoicing, a holiday and a time for sending each other portions of food. Mordecai recorded these events, and they sent letters to all the Jews in the province of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, instructing them to what? Observe the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day, how often? Every year. To commemorate the days on which the Jews obtained rest from their enemies, and the month which for them was turned from sorrow to gladness and from mourning into a holiday, and they were to make them days of celebrating and rejoicing, sending portions of food to each other and giving gifts to the poor. So the Jews took it upon themselves to continue what they had already begun to do, and as Mordecai had written to them, because Haman, the son of Hamdatha, the Agag, the enemies of the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them and had thrown pur, that is, cast lots, to crush and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he ordered by letters that Haman's wicked scheme, which he had plotted against the Jews, should recoil on his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. This is why 3 days have been called Purim after the word pur. Thus, because of everything written in this letter, and what they had seen concerning this matter, and what had come upon them. 27. So the Jews resolved and took it upon themselves, their descendants, and all who might join them. Stop for a second. Who are the ones joining them? Consider Romans 11. Consider Ephesians chapter 2. You who used to be Gentiles are now part of the Commonwealth of Israel. You're brought in to be a part of with a people called Israel. Ezekiel 37 is for the tribe of Judah and those joined with him. The tribe of Yosef, Ephraim, and those joined with him are to come together and to be one. That without fail, that they would observe these 2 days in accordance with what was written in this letter at the appointed time every year. 28, and that these days would be remembered and observed throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, that these days of Purim would never cease among the Jews or their memory to be lost by their descendants. And Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail and Mordecai the Jew, gave full written authority to confirm the second letter about Purim, and he sent copies of it to the Jews to the 127 provinces of the Kingdom of YHWH, ensuring their peace and security, and requiring the observance of these days of Purim at their designated times, as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they established for themselves and their descendants concerning the matters of fasting and lamenting, At Esther's order, these matters of Purim were confirmed and put in a writing in the book. Here's the thing, guys. Why do we tell and honor and confirm the things that Yahweh has done in our life? Why do we do these things? Why do we teach it to our children other than we're commanded to? Why do we tell the next generation about the things that Yahweh has done? So it will not be forgotten. If we do not pass on the word of Yahweh to the next generation, who will? If we do not teach our children, the world will be more than happy to teach. We must share the word of life of what Yahweh has given us to this generation. Like the Shema, these words I give you today, you are to teach it to your children. When? Paraphrasing? All the time. In everything you do. May it be that we search the heart of the Father in all things. That we search for his life in all. That we just seek to follow with. We need to be a people. You know, Yeshua said, if you're not gathering with me, you're scattering. We need to be a people about the kingdom to help bring life to those around us. People are looking for a way, guys. People are looking for the heart of the Father. The answer is him. But we need to be ones to help show that. We need to be the ones to show the heart of the Father. That's what he's called us to do. As it says in the scripture, I've called you to be a light to the nations, light to the goyim. That's what we're supposed to do, be a light to the nations. Where? Well, we're in the nations now. Be a light where you're at and wherever you go. Okay? All right. Let's all stand. Numbers chapter 6. Yahweh told Moshe and Aaron that when you bless my children, I will place my name upon them and I will give them peace. He said, when you bless them, you shall bless them. Shabbat shalom, guys. Bless you all.